It was a freezing winter evening, and the streets were nearly empty. Most people were inside, staying warm in their homes. But not everyone had that luxury. A woman sat on a worn-out blanket near a closed cafe, her arms wrapped around two small children. She pulled them close, trying to shield them from the cold. Her name was Lisa. She had once lived a normal life, but after losing her job and facing unexpected medical bills, everything had fallen apart. Her husband had left, and soon after, she and her kids had nowhere to go. For months, they had been living in their old car. Some nights they found shelter in churches or kind strangers' garages. But lately, options were running out. Lisa did her best to keep her children fed, often skipping meals so they could eat. Not far from where they sat, a man watched them from inside a luxury car. His name was James Carter, a billionaire known for his business empire, but rarely seen in public. He wasn't the type to make grand charitable gestures, but something about this family caught his attention. As he watched the mother whisper to her children, he noticed something rare. She wasn't begging, she wasn't holding a sign or asking for help, she was simply comforting her kids as if the world around them didn't matter. For some reason, he couldn't look away. And in that moment, he made a decision that would change all of their lives forever. James Carter stepped out of his luxury car, pulling his coat tighter against the cold. The city was quiet, except for the occasional sound of cars passing by. He hesitated for a moment, then walked toward the small family huddled outside the cafe. Lisa noticed him approaching and instinctively pulled her children closer. She had seen well-dressed men before, most of them never stopped. Some glanced at her with pity, others ignored her completely. But this man was different. He wasn't just passing by, he was looking directly at her. James crouched down to meet her gaze. "It's too cold to be out here," he said. His voice was calm, without judgment. Lisa nodded but didn't say anything. She had learned to be cautious. People sometimes asked questions, but few really cared. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" James asked. Lisa sighed. "Not really, but we'll manage." Her response surprised him. Most people in her situation would immediately ask for help, but she didn't. There was no desperation in her voice, just quiet acceptance. "What happened?" he asked. Lisa hesitated, glancing at her children, who were now half asleep against her. She didn't like telling strangers about her struggles, but something about this man made her speak. "I lost my job. The rent went up, bills piled up, it just happened," she said simply. James listened without interrupting. He could tell she wasn't making excuses, she was just stating facts. After a moment he made a decision. "Come with me," he said. Lisa's eyes widened. "Why?" James looked at her children, then back at her. "Because no one should have to live like this." Lisa hesitated. She had heard promises before, kind words from strangers who never followed through. But something about this man felt different. He wasn't offering sympathy, he was offering action. Still, she had to be cautious. "Where are we going?" she asked. James didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured toward his car. "Let me show you something." Lisa's instincts told her to refuse. But the biting cold and her children's shivering bodies made her reconsider. She glanced down at them. They were too tired to question anything. After a few seconds, she gave a small nod. "Okay." James led them to his car. Lisa sat in the back with her kids, unsure of what was happening. The warmth inside felt like a luxury. For a moment, she simply closed her eyes, letting the heat thaw her frozen skin. The drive was silent. James didn't ask for details about her life, and Lisa didn't offer them. But the unease in her chest grew as they left the familiar streets of the city. Then the car stopped. Lisa looked out the window and gasped. In front of them was a house, 2 stories, well lit, with a welcoming porch. It looked like something out of a dream. She turned to James in confusion. "What is this?" He smiled slightly. "It's your new home." Lisa blinked, not sure if she had heard him correctly. "What? I want you and your kids to have a place to live. No more sleeping in a car, no more worrying about where to go next." Lisa shook her head, disbelief flooding her. "Why would you do this?" James exhaled, his expression unreadable. "Because I know what it's like to have nothing." Lisa stared at him, still struggling to believe it. Was this real? Could a stranger truly be this generous? She glanced at her children, who were now wide awake, their eyes filled with wonder. For the first time in a long time, hope flickered inside her. but a part of her still wasn't sure if she could accept it. Lisa stood frozen, staring at the house. It looked too perfect, too warm, too good to be true. Her hands tightened around her children's shoulders as doubt crept in. Nothing in life had ever come this easy. There had to be a catch. James must have noticed her hesitation. "It's yours," he said gently. "No tricks, no conditions." Lisa swallowed hard. She wanted to believe him, but she had been let down too many times before. "I don't understand. Why us?" James looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Because everyone deserves a second chance." The front door opened and a warm glow spilled out. Her children couldn't hold back anymore. They rushed past her, running inside with excitement. "Mom, there's a big couch," her son called out. "And a real bed," her daughter added. Lisa's feet felt heavy as she slowly stepped forward. The moment she entered, warmth surrounded her. The house was fully furnished. Plush rugs, soft blankets, even a kitchen stocked with food. It felt lived in, not like an empty space, but a real home. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. This can't be real," she whispered. James leaned against the doorframe watching her. "It is." Lisa turned to face him, still unsure. "I don't even know you. Why would you do all this for us?" James hesitated for a moment before responding, "Because once someone did the same for me." Lisa didn't know what to say. She had spent so long struggling that kindness felt foreign. She wanted to drop to her knees and cry, but she forced herself to stay standing. Instead, she took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. "I can't take this for free," she said firmly. James raised an eyebrow. "You don't owe me anything." Lisa shook her head. "No, I won't just accept it. I need to earn this." A slow smile spread across James's face. He hadn't expected that response. "All right," he said. "Let's talk about how you can." Lisa stood in the middle of the living room, her hands clenched into fists. The warmth of the house, the comfort of knowing her children had a safe place to sleep, it should have been enough to make her say yes. But something inside her refused. "I can't take this for free," she repeated, her voice steady. James tilted his head, studying her. "Why not?" Lisa swallowed hard. "Because I've spent my whole life working for everything. Even when I lost everything, I still tried to earn my way back. I can't just take this without giving something in return." Her children looked up at her, confused. "Mom, we have a house now," her son whispered. Lisa's heart ached. She wanted to accept it for them, but pride and dignity were all she had left. If she gave those up, what example would she set for them? James leaned against the wall, arms crossed. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, to Lisa's surprise, he smiled. "You're different," he said. Lisa blinked. "What?" Most people would have just said thank you and moved on, but you don't want charity, you want a chance." She nodded. "That's all I've ever wanted." James exhaled slowly, thinking. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. "All right, if you want to earn it, let's make that happen." Lisa took the card hesitantly. It had the name of a company on it. "What is this?" "A job," James said simply. "It's at one of my companies, a stable position, good pay, and room to grow." Lisa's breath caught. "You're offering me a job?" James nodded. "You said you want to earn this house. This is how you start." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes. She looked at her children, then back at James. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," James said. Lisa took a shaky breath. This was more than just a house. It was a future, a real chance to rebuild. She closed her fingers around the card and nodded. "Yes," James smiled. "Good. Welcome to your new beginning." Her children cheered, running through the house again, and for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Hope. The next morning, Lisa woke up in a real bed for the first time in months. The soft mattress, the warmth of the blankets, it almost felt like a dream. But as sunlight streamed through the window, she realized it was real. Her children were still asleep, their faces peaceful. No more shivering in the car, no more waking up to hunger. But Lisa knew this wasn't just about comfort. It was about proving she could stand on her own again. She got up, found the business card James had given her, and took a deep breath. It was time to call. A few days later, she arrived at the office building, nervous but determined. She had no idea what kind of job she was walking into. Would they even take her seriously? As she entered, a woman greeted her at the front desk. "Lisa, right? Mr. Carter told us you'd be coming." Lisa nodded, gripping her purse tightly. "Yes." The woman smiled. Follow me. Lisa was led into an office where a manager was waiting. We have an opening in administration, he said. It's an entry-level position, but with hard work, you can move up. Lisa straightened her shoulders. I'll take it. Her first few weeks were tough. She had been out of work for so long that she had to relearn basic tasks, but she pushed through, staying late to catch up, proving to herself and everyone else that she belonged there. James checked in occasionally, watching from a distance. He saw her determination, her refusal to quit. It reminded him of himself when he had nothing. Months passed, and Lisa's life changed in ways she never expected. She had a steady income, her children were thriving in school, and for the first time she was saving money. But she never forgot the promise she had made. She wasn't going to take anything for free. One evening, she sat at her small desk, looking at the numbers in her bank account. She had enough now. She took a deep breath, pulled out her checkbook, and wrote the first payment. It was time to repay the man who had given her a second chance. Lisa stood outside James Carter's office, the check clutched tightly in her hand. She had worked hard for this moment. Every extra hour, every sacrifice, it had all led to this. The receptionist smiled. Go on in, he's expecting you. Lisa stepped inside. James was sitting behind a large desk, scanning through some documents. He glanced up and raised an eyebrow. Lisa, what brings you here? She walked forward and placed the check in front of him. This is my first payment toward the house, she said firmly. James stared at it, then looked back at her. You really did it. I told you I would, Lisa said. And I will keep making payments until every dollar is covered. James picked up the check, studying it for a moment. Then, to Lisa's shock, he tore it in half. Her heart stopped. What are you doing? He leaned back in his chair. I don't want your money, Lisa frowned. But I owe you. I don't take handouts. James sighed, shaking his head. You don't owe me anything, Lisa. You've already earned this house. You worked hard, you rebuilt your life, and you proved something not just to me, but to yourself. Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but he wasn't done. Instead of paying me back, I want you to pay it forward, he said. She blinked. What do you mean? I want you to help someone else the way I helped you. Lisa was speechless. James smiled. One day, you'll come across someone who needs a second chance, just like you did. When that moment comes, don't hesitate. Be the person that changes their life. Lisa's throat tightened. She had been so focused on repaying him that she never considered what she could do for someone else. Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. I will. James extended his hand. Then we're even. Lisa shook his hand, realizing that this journey had been about more than just a house. It was about learning the true meaning of generosity and passing it on.